You moderate and started the mesh group, right? The dental networking group, Den,
Yeah,
I believe it
yeah,
was.
yeah. I was one of the founding members, and it wasn't long before the person who had the idea said, "Would you run it?" So, yeah, that's been long standing. But I had a podcast with Bruce Hurley for quite a while when we were together with Mindfluence, and really enjoyed that. We did every other episode was our own content, and then the off episodes were me interviewing people. So it was fun.
Yeah, I could tell you have so much experience in dentistry. Were you a practice owner early on?
So I'm not one of the reasons why I don't even necessarily always feature the word doctor, not that it has to be avoided, but my background is as a doctor of chiropractic for 33 years. And so I have the experience of being a doctor, patient care person, been a part of the miracles of so many people getting their health back. But my background was not in dental. And it was just interesting that I ended up in dental. And it's not necessarily helpful to always have that conversation in the minds of every dentist. So my wife says, "You worked hard for that and you deserve to say that." I say, "Yeah, but it's not necessarily always helpful. And if it's not helpful in my current incarnation, then I tend to not make a big deal out of it."
I think it's fascinating. People that come in from outside of dentistry, I'm always like super curious to like find out about what got them into dentistry. I found that like half of the situations it was by accident, and the other half it was with some sort of design
Yeah.
behind it.
It gets started when I wrote a book and it came out in the beginning of 2008. And that was a pivotal switch because I never intended to coach laterally. I was always coaching patients and helping give their health back to them. And so it just gave me media and speaking opportunities. And one thing led to another. And I found myself in front of audiences with a lot of dentists in it. And then dentists started to take advantage of what I was doing. And then they went, "Huh, okay, this is good." And nobody else was saying this to us. And I realized there were a lot of people in dentistry that needed help and that dentists were genius, smart, and really technically skilled, but not necessarily great leaders of people. So I ended up finding a home there, I guess.
Yeah, it's a huge pain point. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, how in the dental staffing world, it's not just about finding and sourcing and hiring them. It's also about managing them. You can
Right.
find the golden nugget, but what good is that if you really don't understand how you're supposed to be managing people?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Very true. That's stuff we can talk about today.
Your main focus though is on keeping the talent, not so much on hiring. Is that fair to say?
It's on both, but in this current moment where people are wrestling with finding and the various avenues people are choosing to find something, finding a person and then going ahead and hiring them just because they think they need a person like today. And so it's changed the nature a little bit. So it's once if they're going to grab somebody, then I want to help make sure that we make the most out of who they grab, so to speak.
Yeah.
Really, ideally, my work is best if we are prepared before they hire anybody, and we've actually evaluated the current leadership and team so that we know who we're looking for and how they blend, how they fit for role and team. It's kind of like if somebody's going to bring, and I can mention this, if somebody's going to like a sports team, if a baseball team is going to pick somebody up, either draft somebody or pick somebody up from another team, a free agent or something, then they're going to do that within the context of who they already have. They're not randomly doing this. They're not doing it just because, hey, I need somebody to fill a certain position. They're looking at how is that person in that position going to blend with the other people on the field, right? Or
Mhm.
at football or in whatever soccer, whatever sport we're talking about, you're never just thinking about the position. Yeah, they better be good at that position, but they need to be good in that position in their ability to play well with other people who suit that.
It has to fit the team.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
And people are not necessarily thinking that. How do you know whether they're fitting the team? You need to know yourself and your own team already better than most people do before they hire anybody.
right, exactly. It's not like, when Kobe was around and he was playing for the Lakers, they would bring in another second guard. Like,
Right.
why would they need that? That's not a good fit for the team.
Right.
What are some of your approaches to the evaluation?
Well, I mean, so basically, I mean, the primary starting thing and the thing that I'm doing in my work is through the lens of assessment. I'm using assessments to cheat, to get insider information about people. I'm allowing people using these tools to tell me who they are, what matters to them, where their strengths are, in a way that they would have a harder time consciously articulating, or that other people would be able to draw out of them by asking in an interview. And so the assessments across these multiple dimensions that I'm looking at are able to really tell me most anything I would need to know about fit for role, fit for team, where challenges will be, how we're going to avoid or work through conflict, that sort of thing, how we're going to have people be engaged and optimally productive. So that's the primary thing. And then it's how do we develop the people in those strengths so they get better within that.
Right, because there's a science to the assessment, and there's an outcome to that, that you're trying to find out where there's more needed versus where the strengths are.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
What would you say, is, like, the average commitment to an office from start to finish to this being, like, a successful program for them? What does that look like?
What does the commitment look time
It
frame wise or
Yes.
financially
Ti
or well,
Time frame wise was actually my
from a
question.
time frame perspective, I mean, most of the time I like to think of a year if we're going to really transform and optimize a practice, but usually at least 6 months. By 90 days, we can make tangible change, but it really takes probably 6 months to be able to have helped the leaders be better leaders, more
Mhm.
exceptional leaders, and then to better be coaching their team and to have their team be understanding each other sufficiently. So
Right.
a lot of training that I put people through. So I'm coaching, but I have a lot of training content is that I'm walking people through so they can get better and better at these human skill sets.
Is there any sort of silver bullet to an approach, or, is it it's all different depending on the type of office and the people working within the office?
Yeah, I start with because I don't know where everybody is. It's kind of like a new patient coming into the dentist's office and there needs to be a consultation. There needs to be a full examination. They got to run diagnostics, right, to be able to determine what sort of pathology is going on, what sort of functional disturbances are there, and to then come up with a care plan to be able to resolve this that's likely to occur in a variety of stages over time, right? Because there's a lot of things going on. There's what the patient thinks is going on, and then there's all kinds of other stuff the patient has no idea is going on, right? And so it's the same thing with doctors and their leadership and their teams, is that there's things that they're aware of that are going on most of the time. I have some people tell me they're all fine, everything's fine, but that's unlikely that everything is fully fine. It may be fine enough. There may be other things yelling more loudly in their heads, but there are layers of issues, right? And so I use my people performance scorecard is one way that I begin, which is kind of like the initial case history running of some examination to be able to have them answer some simple questions that help me see where are they in their leadership performance, how would they, upon a little more scrutiny, what would they say about their team performance, about their hiring, and about their orientation and clarity of purpose, right? So once we've got that, then the next level of diagnostics is really doing the assessments and then having some deeper dive conversations into what showed up in all of that.
People drive performance and emotions drive people, as you
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, and that's true. And emotions in the different skill sets within emotions are one of the most important things that I do and I love to do. Doctors are notoriously incredibly intellectually smart and technically skilled, but not necessarily well trained and developed in their emotional aptitudes and skill sets because it was never prioritized. Nobody ever really said this would be an important thing to master, right? So it's at first glance, a lot of the work that I do, business owners, doctors, especially, because I'm not completely in dental, I'm mostly in dental, but the tendency is to look and go, oh, soft science, right? A lot of these things are considered soft science, but soft science kind of means human science. And again, if people are your greatest business asset, which I think they should be, not just your greatest business expense, then we need to get better at what we would call soft science, because if that's people, then people are everything about what makes a practice, right? We got a chance during COVID to kind of see what happens with when you compromise or eliminate the people. There's not much of a practice left.
Right, exactly. I'm more also curious to know about how you able to work with the emotions part of things because you're right. A lot of practice owners, they don't realize two sets of emotions, one their own and two the actual staff member that's working for them. And the recipe of that leads to like an egotistical sort of personality that has no idea he's hurting the feelings of another one that's working for him and is about to lose that staff member.
Right. And that kind of comes back to, even though we're talking about in today on this, on hiring and keeping talented leaders and team members, where I always come back to, and this became clear after just a very short period of time, was that the thoughts that the problems are always the team members, just like the problems are the patients, that's not usually the case. So where I want to look first, just like in a marriage where one person will often say it's the spouse, if the spouse would just change or get better, we'd have a great marriage. And instead, we need to have a better view of ourselves. We need to see ourselves more clearly. And there was the story I came across a little while back that I think is kind of illustrative of this. It told about a person who was trying to describe to another individual that you can see that they could see their reflection in a window if they looked closely. And supposedly this person had never noticed that before. And so they were trying to describe, well, if you look, you can see yourself there. You can see and the person kept looking through the window, noticing and describing everything that was going on outside. And the person was trying to say, no, well, if you look closer in, you can see yourself. And the person was wrestling to accomplish this. And I think it's true in the work that we're doing, since we're with people all the time. If we don't see ourselves more clearly, then we're going to have a very difficult time seeing anybody else with any clarity, starting with
Yeah.
hiring and going all the way through to how to make a great relationship with that person.
Is it a fair statement that most practice owners have a little bit of a mask in front of them? Let's call it an ego that prevents them from being able to be courageous enough to look close enough into that window.
Yeah,
But
I think they'll be even more broadly. I think all humans, to some degree, have a mask that they wear a good part of the time, because there's things we want to show, there's things we don't really want to show to other people. There's a persona that we have. There's a way we see ourselves that's often different than how other people actually see us, and so we're a bit blinded to that because we're living through it all the time. And then I think, yes, too, there's a certain thing. If I'm a doctor, then if I'm too authentic, if I'm too vulnerable, if I'm not guarded about what I reveal to other people, then people won't respect me. People won't want to avail themselves of my services. I need to always carry this thing that I have all the answers and I'm in charge. And I think that there's a distancing and a blockage there that holds people out, that actually is counterproductive, that patients and team members trust us less, respect us less, if we're not revealing enough of who we are, actually.
so the question I guess I really have is like, how do you unmask that so they have the courage to look close at the mirror?
Yeah. Well, I think that it starts with, so one of my core four assessments. I've been using assessments 25 years and I love them. I love the ability to gain it background insights on people, things that where I can look at the result. In fact, I get a dopamine rush every time I see an assessment report come into my inbox from a client, a new team member, a new hire, a new doctor. And it's like, I want to see who they are, and it doesn't tell me everything about who they are, but it gives me little windows into this unique human being. And I think that it starts, so these core four that I have that I put together then are emotional agility, not just emotional intelligence, but I take an angle on how agile are you with your emotions, because it's real time. How well can I shift and adapt in using my own emotional skills and then work with the emotions of another person? It's not abstractly how intelligent am I about it, but what's happening in real time. So emotional agility is one. Cognitive styles. How does a person naturally think across 8 different dimensions? Action approach, which is 4 different types of behavioral styles. And then inspiration sources. I've isolated 7 different inspirational reasons as to why people even care to do what they're doing. Why are they even in your practice? Where's their fulfillment? What are they looking for? If we can know these things, these 4 different dimensions about everybody that's on our team that we're engaged with, then it changes everything as far as I'm concerned. So back to what you asked, is the emotional agility piece is going to be a window in if people are open to being coached about what the results show. So there's a report that's generated based on those answers. If a person authentically answers them, to say, okay, I'll be honest, I'll be a little bit self-reflective and I'll be honest about it for 12 to 15 minutes in taking this, then there'll be a result across 5 different dimensions of emotions, starting with self-awareness, and then the second, self-awareness and impact on others, and then self-management. If we look at those two, just to start with, there's a whole lot of insight when people start to become more self-aware of their state, of their emotional state, and how well they manage that state. Because most of the emotions where we need some work have to do, which is why the persona, the mask you're talking about, is because there's fear, right? What are we afraid of? What are we afraid is going to happen if I'm authentic? If I lead in such a way that I'm serving my team members as opposed to just requiring stuff from them. There's a lot of different mindset shifts that we can make, but we're less inclined to make them if we're coming from a place of anxiety, fear, frustration. So if I can begin to clarify some of those emotional places, then we've got a lot of vistas that begin to open up for how the person can see their team and see the patients differently.
That's really amazing. It's like, this reminds me of like Obi-Wan from Star Wars.
I had somebody, a client of mine did an unsolicited video to co-owners, and they have a professional, we were talking about video editing and stuff. They've got a professional videographer who works for them. And so they recorded this video talking about and advocating for me and talking about what I do. And it was really funny, interesting to watch, because they were wrestling with what to what to call me, how to describe what I do. I consider myself a workplace, a leadership and workplace culture. And yet what they were saying, you're talking about my ability with relationships and relational insights, helping them as leaders based on these relational insights and their teams that influenced hiring and team development, and even how they were orienting to their patients, right? And they were, wanting to say, I was like, it was I was a relationship guru or something. They said, oh, he could probably even help you with your pet, understand your pet. It was kind of silly, but it was interesting passion that I have. And sometimes I think it's like workplace therapy. And in a sense, people think, well, do I need that? Well, it depends on how much people want to grow sometimes, why we're stuck at certain numbers of patients or certain percentage of case acceptance, or how much we are either having turnover or toleration problems with our team members. They're often back to that, seeing our reflection in the window. What is it telling us about us? Right?
Right.
What's the message about us? And do we want to change at all? Would we want to get better? Or do we think that the issues are all just out here? And if we could just ditch Delta, or we could just get that next perfect hire, that all this would be great, and not necessarily.
What a hidden pain point in dentistry. It's, not many people realize that I think this should be like a requirement if you're gonna be a practice owner and an entrepreneur hiring people as employees. You have to understand them and they have to understand the practice at the same time. How much of a time commitment does it typically take, like a practice? Like, how does the program work?
Usually after I have people do that little 6 to 8 minute people performance scorecard. And then I even offer a 20-minute chat just to say, is there one thing in there where you might like a breakthrough? If we talk for 20 minutes, can I help you have one breakthrough of a place that you're telling me you're stuck when you take the scorecard? And then it's an easy beginning. If people take that, and there's always things that show up, and then we can key in on something, and then they'll often say, well, what might we do next? What else do you have after this? And so usually what I say is, let's look at your current team. What do you have are there other doctors involved? Do you have partners? How big is your leadership team? How many practices do you have? How many people do you have? If it's big enough, then maybe we start with assessments, my core four assessments on just the leadership team. And I have a number of people who start there. And so we do this core four across the leadership team. We put charts together. If there's 5 people that we're doing, we'll put charts together with all the scores. So we're generating data, right? Dentists like data.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're generating human data. So instead of it being a lot of the statistical things that they're accustomed to, it's not just soft science. There's data that we can gather, and we need to gather, and we need to talk about relative to the human part of all of this. So we'll put the charts together, and now you can begin to look at the strengths, and it's strengths based, right? What strengths based contributions are you going to bring to this role, to this team? So if we start with who is there already, what are you bringing as the owner, doctor, primary CEO, visionary leader? What's the rest of the leadership bringing? We'll put those together on charts, and we see, is everybody thriving in their strengths? And a lot of times, say like cognitive styles, for example, there's 8 different cognitive styles. And the research shows that a lot of times people are spending a good bulk of their day not primarily engaging their top couple of cognitive strengths. So it doesn't mean you can't do those other ones. It means you're not going to be as energized, as productive, as fulfilled as when you get a chance to be even more perfectly suited for your part. Right. So we begin to do that. Then if people are buying 5, we put the charts together, and then there's a call included with that, a longer call. And I'll debrief and apply what we can, as much as we can cover about that leadership team. And then from there, we either do more of the rest of the team, or at that point, the person will say, what would it look like to do some coaching and training for our leadership team and for the rest of the team? And so I give some options there that typically, it depends. It's variable. How much of it's leadership focused, how much of it's team focused. I will often do one Zoom team training, or if it depends on how big the teams are, a couple of team Zoom trainings during the course of a month. But I really, really want to work with leadership at first, so that we can get a feel for where they are, what they need. So it's probably a couple hours a week, I would say, for the leadership.
Mhm.
Solve it would be enough for us to make great progress.
Is this for everyone? Like every practice size? And I'm curious to know what's the average practice size that you tend to gravitate?
Where I found most recently my wheelhouse, and historically I had always been, in my beginnings, was just a single location doctor, and anything from 3 to 5 team members up to 8 to 10, right? It would be one office, and then it might be one associate, 2 associates, and it was up to, say, 30 team members in one location. Then I started finding that really the big need is optimizing that with an entrepreneurial view as to how we're going to, if we have that entrepreneurial desire, how we're going to get to 2 to 3 to 5 to 7 practices. That range, right? Small emerging DSO focus, because they're working on scaling purchasing, they're working on scaling software, on systems and processes. Scaling the people part of this development is a massive problem. And they're ill-equipped. Most are ill-equipped to do it, whether they admit it or not.
If there was a
Once they've gotten to 15, 20 practices, they have to have figured something out and brought maybe somebody even in-house to be trying to do this on an ongoing basis, so they probably wouldn't have survived to get to that point.
it's the mindset of them having to understand that this is needed as an entrepreneur that's trying to scale with processes like any other business that you're running from 1 to 5 practices.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I was just going to say, we were talking earlier just about why some of this matters about people plus purpose. How did I get into that? Maybe just for a minute. And why do I see that it matters? And I named this, and people who know me and know what I do say this, consider this like the perfect name for my work and what we're trying to accomplish. But it's people plus purpose on purpose. And a lot of that goes back to my own beginnings, because growing up, I didn't really have either in any significantly positive way. Came from a very broken family. Dad left when I was 2. My mom was not highly functional. And I had one older brother. I was raised myself, or like a pack of wolves or something. I don't know. But so I was looking for people, relationships, and connection. But I also didn't have a clear sense of purpose. Like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Why am I doing this? But I was always seeking that. I know people who don't. I know people who into adulthood and they never really thought about it. I was always looking for that. So what I'm finding, and then fast forward, was accomplishing that purpose, people, was married 2.5 years into my marriage. I adopted my wife's twin 5-year-old daughters. And then within 6 weeks, she had a heart attack and died. And so here I was at 30, about to turn 31, twin 5-year-olds. And the reason I have them is gone. And so as part of the healing in going through the grieving process of that, I distinctly remember the day where I was crying out to God and saying, if I could have a life that felt like it was worth living again, then I will dedicate the rest of my life to helping other people find and live their best life. So really, the rest of my doctoring career, to everything I've been trying to use assessments for, the guided work through the assessments to help people clarify, where are you going? Where are you taking this team? Some people will tell me I'm working hard every day, expecting I'll get somewhere good, and you'll get somewhere, but it may not be exactly where you want to go. So can we get clear on your vision? Can we get clear on a purpose-driven mission? And then can we articulate that better to all the people you're leading, because they'd like to know? And then can we verify then who are the people you need on that journey with you to fulfill that vision? And then can we work better together? Can we be a real team, not just an aggregation of individuals, so that we make the process enjoyable and we truly get there? That's a lot of what drives me and why I'm offering what I'm offering.
Wow, that's first of all, my condolences. I had no idea that was in your history. I saw on your website you wrote about a tragic situation that had happened to you in your life, but that must have been something incredibly difficult. And it's ironic we're recording this right before Mother's Day too. My mother passed away over 10 years ago, and you understand what it's like being in the dad's shoes, kind of a outside the glass perspective too. At the same younger age with the kids, and my dad was a bit older. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was that. And then the challenges when I remarried, I married a woman that had a daughter 1 month younger than the twins. And so when we married, we blended 3 same age girls, none of whom were mine biologically. We did have a son was ours 2 years later, which was a salvation, I think. But all those years were not easy, because those 3 girls they were not thrilled about the way life had gone for them, even though we were all doing the best we could. But yeah, I tell people a lot. I've had a chance to share my story, especially earlier on, a lot. And it was part of what drove me to eventually later write my book, in terms of wanting to tell stories of people's lives under care that improved. But I try to take a lens of seeing people not as physical bodies that had pain or had issues that needed to be tended, but as human beings with body, mind, soul that had blockages, that had challenges, that needed somebody to help them through to get to the other side. And so that gave a lot of driving purpose for what I was doing. And it's that kind of thing. I use that as an example. That's not everybody's story, right? That's not necessarily why everybody is doing their dental practice, but why do you care? Why do you care? And what do you most want your team to know about why you care and where you're going? And we're not promised, I've certainly learned that we're not promised any amount of time. We're all here for a little window and then we're gone. We're not just here to work hard. We're here, I believe, to accomplish something. So, what are we accomplishing? And how are we really helping other people who are going on the journey with us accomplish what they need to accomplish too? It changes the world to me in terms of hiring, team development, because it goes deeper than a lot of times what we're willing to do.
Your approach is super benevolent and very open-handed. It's amazing. And what's even more amazing is that it stems from your past. It wasn't taught to you, you've experienced it.
Yeah.
And I've actually never met anybody like you in dentistry. I've been in dentistry for many years, 25 years, believe it or not, and I'm only 42. And I've never met anybody like you. I think you're definitely one of the most unique and benevolent, smartest, intelligent people I know in dentistry.
Thank you, Darius. I appreciate that. I am truly doing this because this is my heart and soul. And the older I get, I change. We all change as we get older. The things that matter to me now, I just feel like between now and when I leave the planet, I just want to do whatever I can. Yes, this is what I do for a living. This is my exchange for a living, but it is truly what I love doing. And the need is there. And it's an interesting field in which I work because so many people don't know that they have the need, even though they have the need. So it's like an interesting marketing endeavor as well, right? Because
Yeah.
I have to try to help people see that they need something. But then the people that I work with, it's not very long before before they're starting to go, I had no idea that this was even possible. We could do this.
How many clients, may I ask, have you serviced since you started all this?
I'm not sure because it's happened in different degrees over the years. There's different amounts of engagements. There's several hundred, some very intensely, some moderately so. Lots of people that I've done assessments for and done some degree of coaching training for a window of time. I've got clients who stay with me for years, and it's like peeling layers of the onion off. We just go deeper.
Yeah.
I even have clients that are once we start to work together. I've had just recently a couple of different ones where they said, If we pay you, can you do coaching to help us with our marriage?" And that was not my intention. I'm not a licensed marriage and family therapist or clinical social worker, but my relationship experiences, my what I do in my work, the assessments that I use, these assessments work amazingly well for a husband and wife, right? Because a lot of those things are, you're different than me. I don't quite understand you. You're not doing and being how I expected. Were those reasonable expectations in the first place? Are we celebrating differences? Do I know how to communicate with you effectively? If we run into a conflict, do we know how to get to the other side of this without just somebody getting pissed off and walking away? So these are all the same skill sets on a personal basis. I'm just bringing them more into the workplace as far as people want to go.
Do you accept American Express? I love your approach, and I'm actually going to bring it up with the team at Cloud Dentistry to see what their thoughts are in incorporating you in our HR vitality, I'll call it. We took an assessment a while ago, and I remember the execs all got together and we discussed it. It was a great sense of kudos at the same time understanding one another and understanding oneself because we all answered it pretty honestly.
Right.
And I remember the takeaways from that still resonate with me today, where one person in charge of one role that I got to know pre-assessment versus like post-assessment, because we all talked about our results
Hmm.
publicly to one another.
Hmm.
And it made me kind of say, yeah, that's true. Like that is a weakness that maybe I could approach working with them through this angle instead of
Right.
that angle to help them to be able to perform better at their weaknesses and at the same time emphasizing on the strengths.
Yeah. I would love to do that. If that's something that you would like to even just talk about more, certainly be happy to do that. It makes me think of one more thing, which is a lot of times when I'll talk to people about assessments, there's some people who've never done any assessment, but that's increasingly rare, it seems. So people have done something. I'm a proponent not for just a one-dimensional view on something. Sometimes people say, "Yeah, we did a Colby, or we did a strengths finder, we did a some," and all valuable, right? But I think multiple dimensions that are separate and being able to look at those dimensions, like those four that I mentioned earlier, and integrate them together gives a much more well-rounded view of a human, but also how are we using them? So I've had people say, yeah, somebody had me do that as part of a quick hiring decision, but I never really knew the results much and we didn't do anything with it. So it doesn't seem like it really mattered. So I'm not sure I'm a fan of assessments. Or people have said we did a one-off kind of team building experience. We all did this thing. We all kind of had a fun event around it, but then it got put away in the drawer, like a lot of things, right? Like we go to seminars and we get our binders and we learn lots of stuff. We're excited. We're going to do something with this. And then it gets put on the shelf. And we don't really apply it as much as we thought we were going to, or to make it as worthwhile as it could have been. So the idea of these charts that we put together and training on these different dimensions is I'm trying to change that to where it's not those two options, but instead we can build a framework, a language into the culture of the business so that the team, not just leaders to team members and team members to leaders, but team members to each other, how do we best communicate with each other? Because I really know your strengths and I know what's not your strength and I know what to expect. I know when to come to you. And we're really able with intention to be able to bring people together in a way that intuitively we can get so far. But even when people are really intuitively good at things like this, there's still pieces that they can't know. I've been doing this a long time, but if I don't see assessment results, I get a fairly good fix after this amount of time. But there's things where I see the results and I go, huh, I didn't really see that. I didn't really know that about that person. And then we're able to then say, well, how can we begin to have dialogue around this? How can we begin to support each other
Right.
in a way that we hadn't before? And I think that's pretty exciting stuff.
Right. I'm sure that it's a continuous sort of effort that needs to be taken upon. What does the service cost?
It can be just to start with assessments. If we're doing one set of core four is $117. If somebody wanted to just try a core four set, $117. If you buy 5 sets, then the price comes down to $97 per person for these 4 different assessments with reports. And then we include the charts and I include an hour of my time. And then for every set of 5 more, you get another hour of my time. And so that's one way that people will start. And then they're getting the assessments and they're getting my time to begin to debrief and apply these things. If you buy 20, then it goes down to $67 per. If people want to coach with me, then there's opportunities anywhere from $600 up to $1,300 a month, depending upon how many calls we're doing, how many coaching calls. And I do coaching calls divided up between leaders, between subgroups of teams, whole teams. It just kind of depends on the needs of the practice. And then sometimes people have needs for extra calls, and then we can do an additional per call kind of thing.
Holy smokes, that's like beyond reasonable
It
for all
is.
that.
It is. I have people tell me that I'm undercharging. And so that may not be forever, but that's what it is right now. And so, yeah, it is a great opportunity.
Yeah, if a practice owner is listening and doesn't take advantage of this, I would say it's peso wise, pound foolish.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And a lot of times what's the thing that that patients will say about a new procedure that's being recommended to them? It's usually time or money. I'm not going to do that because of time or money. And sometimes people would say it's more time. Other people would say it's more money. But often what I learned to be true for doctors with patients or business owners or salespeople with whoever they're talking to is it's not time or money. There are hard realities at a point, right? Most of the time, what people are saying is, I'm yet unconvinced. I yet don't understand the value of what you're offering. I don't really know what this would do for me if I said yes versus if I say no. If I'm not in pain right now, then that procedure that you're recommending, seems optional because it's kind of expensive. I do have to show up, and if my insurance isn't going to pay, maybe, or whatever. But people have to get really clear on what matters and see their need, right? How will life be better?
This is one of those things, just coming from a guy who recently took an assessment test with a team around us, that discussed it openly. We didn't have a coach, but it worked out. This is one of those things where you just gotta take it from someone who's actually done it before. It's worth it. And for what you're charging for it with your experience, it's a no-brainer to invest in the culture and the leadership, management, and communication of your company. And if you're right, most people don't move forward with something because of time or cost, but there's really not that much time they need to invest in order to get like an impactful
Yeah.
breakaway, as you call
Yeah.
it, in 20-minute session. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Dr. Matthew Norton. It's been amazing getting to know you better.
Thank you, Darius. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. I do.